Hi, I'm the History Guy, and today I'm proud to bring you the next episode in my series on the History Guy's hats that is exclusive to patrons on Patreon. The hat that I'm going to highlight today represents a proud tradition of military service that's important not just to all of the United States military services, but throughout the world. It represents some of that pomp and circumstance that makes military uniforms so spectacular and makes collecting military uniforms so interesting. Enjoy the episode, and as always, thank you for being a patron. At first glance, this hat looks kind of strange. It's clearly an Air Force hat. You know that because it's color 1620, which is otherwise known as Air Force Blue. But this emblem, it doesn't look like a United States Air Force emblem, the typical silver randell that has the Great Seal of the United States on it that you would expect from the United States Air Force dress cap. Rather, this hat is what the Air Force calls the ceremonial hat. And it represents enlisted personnel and company-grade officers who are members of the United States Air Force Honor Guard. And it's relatively unique in that while all of the United States services have honor guards, and most of them have uniform elements that distinguish their honor guards, only the United States Air Force has a distinct ceremonial cap. Well, virtually any military unit may be called upon for a ceremonial function, and in fact, non-military organizations such as police and fire departments often play such roles as well. In fact, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has an honor guard. To date, many nations have specific units designated for these ceremonial roles. It is difficult to pinpoint exactly the history of honor guards, as their multiple, mostly ceremonial modern roles are often grounded in ancient military traditions. One typical responsibility of honor guards is to protect heads of state and visiting dignitaries. Thus, the idea of honor guards is partially derived from various guards units originally formed as personal guards for military or civilian leaders. Units of imperial guard date back to antiquity. The Achaemenid Empire maintained a standing army that also acted as an imperial guard. This elite heavy infantry unit was kept at a constant strength of 10,000, earning them the title the Immortals, although that title came from the Greek historian Herodotus and may not have been used by the Achaemenids. Among the most famous of the ancient imperial guards were the Roman Praetorian Guards, which originated as bodyguards for Roman generals and often served as veteran reserve that could be thrown in to shift the course of a battle. As the general or emperor would depend upon the loyalty of the guards, they were often treated and paid better than other soldiers. They were provided with better equipment, had a greater expectation of esprit de corps. Part of their strength was in reputation, and these units were designed to impress or intimidate. But creating such units created risk in itself. The Roman Praetorians eventually gained so much political power that they became centers for intrigue, to the point where they could overthrow emperors. The idea of elite guards units was maintained in the modern world. During the Napoleonic Wars, Napoleon's Imperial Guard played a role very like the Praetorians. The Imperial Guard was directly under the command of Napoleon and loyal to him, acting both as a personal bodyguard and as a strategic reserve. Napoleon's Imperial Guard had better pay, rations, and equipment than other soldiers. The Imperial Guard, which was divided into the Old, Middle, and Young Guard based on their experience, were specifically selected for physical traits such as imposing height. Likewise, designated honor guard units today very often have exacting physical requirements that exceed normal military requirements. They very often choose among elite soldiers and stress performance and character as the public representation of their country and service, and is represented in a line from the creed of the United States Air Force Honor Guard, handpicked to serve as a member of the United States Air Force Honor Guard. My standards of conduct and level of professionalism must be above reproach, for I represent all others in my service. The direct relationship to historic guards units is often explicit, and modern honor guards very often wear special service uniforms that hearken to historical periods. Well, that idea can be seen in the badge of the Air Force ceremonial cap, which harkens back to the famous Hap-Arnold insignia used by the U.S. Army Air Forces before the creation of the Air Force in 1947. The most spectacular example in the United States is probably Company A of the 4th Battalion of the U.S. 3rd Infantry Regiment, called the Commander-in-Chief's Guard. The group claims nominal lineage to a unit created in March of 1776 as the personal bodyguard and escort for George Washington. The modern ceremonial uniform for the company still includes tricorn hats and powdered wigs, and they are, when performing ceremonial duties, armed with a smoothbore musket based on the Brown Bess. In addition to receiving and protecting dignitaries, honor guards frequently act as color guards. Color guards hearken to the period of warfare where units moved in formation, and the colors were an integral part of managing armies. The colors were a rallying point and allowed soldiers to recognize the location of their unit on a chaotic battlefield, often obscured by smoke. The use of military colors and standards goes back to ancient times. A unit's colors literally represented the unit and were often presented to them by a head of state. It was a grave dishonor to lose colors to an enemy in battle, and a distinct honor to capture an enemy's colors. During the U.S. Civil War, federal soldiers were routinely awarded the Medal of Honor for capturing a Confederate standard, and George Custer's brother Tom was awarded the medal twice over the course of 4 days for capturing enemy battle standards during the Appomattox Campaign. Colors are no longer taken on the battlefield, but color guards harken back to a time when senior non-commissioned officers were assigned to carry and defend the standard in battle. It was considered a great honor to be so selected, and like today's honor guards, those selected would be considered the best representatives of their nation and unit. A sober responsibility of color guards is to attend military traditions at the funerals of distinguished persons, war dead, and veterans. The tradition of covering the casket with a flag goes back to the Napoleonic era, where war dead would be removed from the battlefield, covered in a flag. In the U.S., the tradition is for the field of blue on the flag to be placed at the head over the left shoulder of the coffin, and the flag must never touch the ground. The flag, often funded by veterans groups, is carefully folded and presented to a survivor. The U.S. 3rd Infantry Regiment, called the Old Guard, and the oldest active duty regiment in the United States Army, includes a caisson platoon, which provides horses to pull the caisson, a wagon used to support an artillery piece that carries a coffin at a state funeral, as well as providing the symbolic riderless horse, a symbol of the fallen comrade that some historians think dates back as far as Genghis Khan. Empty boots are placed backwards in the saddle to represent a general's last look back at their troops. The tradition of firing guns at military funerals actually harkens back to 2 different traditions. The tradition of a 21-gun salute started with a naval tradition, possibly starting in the 16th century, when a defeated naval vessel was required to empty its guns, thus disarming himself before surrender. The same practice was used when a ship approached a naval fortification. The ship would be expected to empty its cannons, showing that it was disarmed and had no hostile intent. Over time, that came to be interpreted as a salute, and would be used to salute arriving dignitaries. The more important the dignitary, the more guns fired. In early British tradition, the largest volley for a head of state was 21 guns. Actually, different nations use different numbers for different situations. In Canada, for example, a 21-gun salute is used to commemorate a visiting head of state, or to commemorate Remembrance Day, the Canadian version of the U.S. Memorial Day. But only 15 guns are fired at state funerals. Artillery salutes are used for state funerals, but also state occasions and celebrations. When a 21-gun salute is tradition for most U.S. salutes, a 50-gun salute is made on Independence Day, representing each of the 50 states. The U.S. Presidential Salute Battery is responsible for firing ceremonial cannon volleys in Washington, D.C., and for most state occasions. In the United Kingdom, that role is played by the King's Troop of the Royal Horse Artillery. That tradition is different than the 3-volley salute used at most military funerals. Whereas a 21-gun salute is an artillery salute, the 3-volley salute uses rifles. The tradition dates back to the 17th century European dynastic wars. Warring armies would periodically call a halt to a battle so the armies could remove the dead and wounded. By tradition, 3 shots would then be fired in the air, signifying the battle could then resume. This came to be seen as a measure of respect for the dead, and the 3-volley salute is often used as part of the ceremony of military funerals in the United States, Great Britain, and the Commonwealth. The rifles use blanks and are usually fired in the air over the casket. While the gun party typically has an odd number of members, often 3 or 7, it is coincidence that a 7-person gun party firing 3 times equals 21 shots, and that is apparently unrelated to the tradition of the 21-gun salute. A somber part of a military funeral in the United States is the playing of the bugle call taps. Adapted in 1862 from an earlier bugle call by Union Brigadier General Daniel Butterfield, the tune was originally intended to represent Lights Out, replacing a French bugle call that Butterfield felt was too formal. The name taps may actually refer to 3 drum taps that were usually struck after the playing of the evening tattoo to signify lights out. The tradition of playing the call at a military funeral was established the same year, when a Union captain wished to have a funeral for a fallen member of his unit, but was not allowed to use the traditional 3-volley salute, as they were so close to the enemy that there was fear that it might alarm the army and start a battle. Instead, he used the bugle call. The use of the call became commonplace in both the Union and Confederate armies, and was officially adopted for military funerals in the United States in 1891. There are so many military funerals in the United States that the Ceremonial Honor Guards, whose units are located in the Washington, D.C. area, could not be present for them all. Thus, the Air Force has a Base Honor Guard program. A group of airmen, non-commissioned officers, and officers at any of the U.S. air bases worldwide receive a Protocol, Honors, and Ceremonies course. That group will then be responsible to provide military funeral honors to veterans or service members who die within the base's geographic responsibility. While not members of the Air Force Honor Guard, which is stationed at Joint Base Anacostia Bolling in Washington, D.C., members of the Base Honor Guard program often apply for and are selected for duty with the United States Air Force Honor Guard. One of the more spectacular roles of the Honor Guards are drill teams. Military drill was essential in an age of maneuvering by unit and is still used as an essential method of developing discipline and teamwork. Drill teams perfect military drills based on their drill manuals. The 5 U.S. military services each have drill teams whose precision drill is performed at official occasions. The U.S. Army drill team is part of the headquarters company of the 4th Battalion of the 3rd Infantry Regiment and performs at up to 100 ceremonies a year. The United States Marine Corps Silent Drill Platoon performs a unique silent precision drill. The 24-member platoon is often called the Marching 24. Military honor guards play a unique role. They represent a nation in their service to the public and keep alive military traditions, some of which are millennia old. They hold themselves to the very highest standards of military honor and discipline. They welcome a nation's friends. They commemorate a nation's national occasions, and they salute a nation's honored dead. They serve to keep alive military tradition and history and remind a nation of the sacrifices made by those who serve.